Hi, welcome to another episode of Montana Shares, your opportunity to find out about the nonprofits that make our state great. Today I have Sid with me from the Greater Montana Foundation. Welcome, Sid.
I'm glad to be with you, Bill.
Great. So give us a sort of the high-level view. What's Greater Montana Foundation all about?
Greater Montana Foundation is not quite as well known as some of the other nonprofits that are frequently in the news. Greater Montana Foundation was established by a pioneer broadcaster, philanthropist, and entrepreneur, Ed Craney, in 1958. And exactly, quite a long time ago. We're well endowed, so we don't do a lot of fundraising, and we don't run programs. I think that's one of the reasons perhaps people are not so familiar. But what we are able to accomplish, which really does a lot for many organizations, is to give out grants. And these are grants for communication, primarily electronic. And the definition of what it's going to be about is pretty wide. I always have to read it. The Greater Montana Foundation benefits the people of Montana by encouraging communications with an emphasis on electronic media, on issues, trends, and values of importance to present and future generations of Montanans. So what does that mean? It means we give out grants for radio, for television, for web-based programs, for film, for documentaries, for all kinds of electronic communication on a wide variety of subjects.
Great. So you've got that enviable job. You wake up in the morning and like, we have to give money away today. It must be hard, right?
Well, it would be even more fun if we did it every single day.
Right.
What we do, however, is accept grant applications once a year. April 1st is our deadline, so I want to be sure when people see it that if they're interested in applying, they go to our website, look at the application form and the instructions that go along with it. I want to say, after having had a background in a number of grant-making organizations and foundations, this is the most straightforward and simple grant application I have ever seen. Tell us who you are, tell us what it is you want to do, tell us how it fits this broader mission, give us your budget, tell us who's going to do it. I'm happy to work with people, go through drafts with them and so forth and so on. It can be sent by email or postmarked by April 1. Something else that's different that's very beneficial for grant applicants is that when we meet, and we meet once annually in person in June, we devote one whole day to having our grant applicants come in and make a personal presentation of their application. That gives them a chance to really showcase what it is their organization does, what it is they would like to do with the grant money, and respond to any questions from our board.
Okay. Now, am I correct you don't have to be a nonprofit to apply? Do you give money out to just individuals for certain projects?
First of all, no, we don't give to individuals.
Okay.
I don't know any foundations that do.
Okay,
There's certain provisions for scholarships and so on, but that's a different kind of category. What we do that is different, and it's because of our founder. And I want to speak just a moment about our founder. He was one of the most interesting people and a real pioneer in Montana. He started out in Spokane, Washington. He built a crystal radio set when he was in high school, so that gives you an idea of how long ago that was. His first job was with a Spokane radio station. He was the first person to put Bing Crosby on the radio. They maintained a lifelong friendship and correspondence. He then went, again, as quite a young man, to Butte, Montana, started the first radio station there. Then he started a network of radio stations. And one of the reasons he wanted to do this, he said, was to make people in those far-flung, isolated rural towns feel as though they were really part of Montana. He then, as television came along, he jumped right into that and again started a television network. He did very well financially and was enormously generous then with what he had done. He established the Greater Montana Foundation. He also had a large collection of artifacts, Western paintings, and so forth and so on, which he had the foundation donate to the Historical Society. But what he wanted to do was to give out grants that would improve electronic communication. Now you can imagine in 1958, there was no such thing as PBS or NPR or that kind of thing. So it was primarily in those days to commercial broadcasters. Now the IRS has some rules, and they're good ones. You don't want to give to profit-making organizations out of charitable funds. But we have certain provisions whereby we can give grants to commercial stations, and they have to fill out a lengthy legal addendum swearing they'll spend the money properly. It is for things that will improve their broadcasting, to do work that their regular budgets won't allow them to do. A couple of recent examples are those trips that the governor took, one to China 2 years ago, one to Korea and Taiwan last year. There's not a TV station in the state that could afford to send a staff person. We helped fund that. There was another one, another station did a documentary about stopping sex trafficking, working with the AG and so forth and so on. So it can be for an immediate program of great interest or for a documentary of some kind.
Okay.
If it's an immediate kind of thing, there is not a deadline for commercial stations. If it's just a regular grant type of thing, they have to fall in with the regular grant guidelines and deadlines.
Okay, I knew there was something. It's the commercial stations that was what I was trying to get to.
One other wrinkle, and this isn't unique to the Greater Montana Foundation, although not all foundations do so. We occasionally give a grant to an organization that is not a nonprofit, but in order to accept it, they have to get what's called a fiscal sponsor. That is to say, a 501c3 who will accept the grant money on their behalf and who is responsible for accounting and reporting back to the foundation. So we will occasionally do that.
Okay. Well, give me some examples of what kind of grants you do work on and who's receiving them.
I would just be very happy to do that. We have several kinds of grants, and I'm going to speak for a moment about the ones that we fund pretty much annually. Once again, this is different from most foundations. Most of the time you get a grant, you do the work, maybe it's renewed for another year or two, but then it's kind of go on about your business, find some other source of revenue. This foundation continues to fund good programs over time. Now that doesn't mean it's automatic. The people have to come back, put in a grant application, come and present and so forth and so on. But a few examples of that are the radio and TV department at the University of Montana in the journalism school. We give them between 25 and 30 or so thousand a year, depending on what they want it for. This goes for legislative reporting, students reporting at the legislature. Those years it's a little more. Student documentary, business made in Montana, done by the students and so on. We give every year to Montana Public Radio and fund a variety of programs. We give directly to some of the programs that are on NPR. Brian Kahn's Common Ground, Clay Scott, for example. Then we give to Montana PBS, usually around $50,000–$55,000 a year. Again, these are for various programs. So Backroads of Montana, 11th and Grant, documentaries that they are doing, and so on. So those are some samples of ones that we really do fund almost every single year and have over time. Some of the others that we have, this is a newer one, it's a particular favorite of mine, Maps Media, up in the Bitterroot Valley. A man named Peter Roston, who was a big success in Hollywood, decided to retire, and he picked the Bitterroot Valley to do so. He realized there were some real needs for the students in that town, and he started something called MAPS, the Media Arts Program.
Okay.
It's an after-school program. It is free. It is training kids in radio, video, making documentaries, and so on. It is an absolutely tremendous program. They do some work for fees, and they do some that are PSAs and so on. These kids are really learning. They're winning awards. Some of them have already gone on to jobs in broadcasting of one kind or another.
That's fabulous. I mean, we're in such an electronic media age. To have kids learning how to do it in high school gives them great transition tools into adulthood.
It absolutely does. And that's an area where, while there's so many, many extremely wealthy people, there's a large group of kids who don't have a lot. And this has been really especially wonderful for them.
Right. I think we've sort of democratized media in a lot of ways. It used to be you have to have studios like we're in now or something
Good
to do
point.
this. Right now you can do it with a phone and your computer and do your own editing, but even
Sure.
then it still helps to have someone mentoring you and helping you along in
Exactly.
that process. That sounds like a
Exactly.
great program. So how much do you give away each year?
We give away between $315,000 and about $330,000 a year.
Okay, great.
I would also add, speaking of studios, that several of our programs are produced here in this studio. Evan Barrett's Crucible of Change, which is a wonderful interview program about the history during the time when Montana was changing from being a tool of the corporations into being a very independent, very progressive state. So he's done a series, I want to say it's like 20, 25 interviews, and he does them here. They're broadcast on the statewide TV, the public TV, and the Helena and other ones. He's also using them now in a class that he has at the Highlands Tech College in Butte. Steve Malley and Global Civics, although I think most of those are done at the studio at the Historical Society. But he's been a recipient of several grants. He does wonderful work, and we've given them to him for different kinds of programs.
Okay. So just let's go over the grant process one more time since it is fairly timely.
Sure.
This is going to be mid-March. The deadline's a couple of weeks away.
A couple of weeks away.
And go to the website, get the facts,
Yes.
probably call you up early on, is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And just kind of run stuff by you and then start working on it really fast and get it in by April 1st.
And you know what? I don't think that's going to pose a big problem for anybody. People have an idea in their mind when you say grant writing. I think they picture sort of writing a grant to the federal government.
Right, the tedious kind.
Which
Multiple
are like,
pages,
yeah,
huge.
by the pound.
Right.
This, as I say, is simple, straightforward. Yes, we need the accurate information and so on, but we don't need everything. And there are, we've written a thing, here's how to do it. Such things as, give us the budget. We don't need the budget for your organization for the last 3 years. Give us the budget for this program. Our board chair, Bill Whitsitt's phrase is, don't tell us everything you know, tell us what we need to know. So, and again, I'm happy to go over drafts. I'm happy to, review things, happy to give people tips. The idea is we want the very best application from people who have good programs they'd like to present.
And how many do you typically give away? How many grants each year?
Probably between 20, 25.
Okay.
One of our partners, a couple partners I want to be sure to speak about. One of them is the Montana Historical Society. A number of years ago, we gave a $600,000 grant to the Historical Society to be paid over a period of years. And initially it was, well, it still is actually, but for the new building to have a state-of-the-art Ed Craney studio. It would also have some historic artifacts and so forth and so on. Well, as we know, that new building hasn't taken place. They still have the money in a special account. But we also worked with them to use some of it to bring that auditorium at the Historical Society up to date technologically. Steve was also a big help with that. We also worked with the Society for a special place on an initiative. Now, we don't run programs as a rule, but we did run this initiative, we still are, called the Broadcast Legacy Initiative. And this is interviews with some of our board members who are experienced broadcasters with people who have been pioneers in Montana broadcasting. Not just people who have been around a long time, but who have had a real impact on the industry and the profession itself. So those are housed at the Historical Society, and there's a dedicated computer and area where you can view them.
I've actually been to the auditorium at the Historical Society, and I've seen the plaque on the wall, with where the funds came from. So I've benefited from something you do already.
Oh, good. And if you look around that studio, that's where the collection of art and artifacts of
I
Ed
did
Craney's
notice that
house.
as well. Right.
Another partner is Montana Broadcasters Association. Again, getting back to Ed Craney, his idea was to have the absolute very best broadcasting and best trained people you possibly could, and to give them opportunities in Montana so they didn't always have to go out of state for jobs. So we work with the Montana Broadcasters Association, and with a grant of about $30,000 a year, we fund something called the EB Awards. Now that's for Edward B. Craney, the EBs. And there are various large number of categories. And the awards are given out at a special banquet they do at their annual meeting, which most of the time, most of our members attend. We also work with them and have sponsored debates of gubernatorial candidates and so forth and so on.
Okay, wonderful. So do you have any final thoughts you want to wrap up on here? Any last minute things I forgot to ask you?
I think we've talked about quite a bit. I would just encourage people who have an interest and who have a project we can maybe fund. And I would want to say also thank you to our board. It is a wonderful board. It is all volunteers. Helena members include currently Fred Flanders, and also Steve Browning and Sarah Etchart have been on our board. So get in touch with us. We're dying to give away money to the very best projects we can possibly find.
That sounds great. Well, super. Thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure.
And thank you guys for tuning in today. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.